Thank you for listening to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formingforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for Forming for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. Welcome to Speaking with Confidence, a podcast that's here to help you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm your host, Tim Newman, and I'm excited to take you on a journey to become a better public speaker. Today's guest is Philip Sessions. He's a Christian, husband, girl dad, and the most persistent person you'll ever meet. Philip went from being the shy, quiet guy to one who commands any room he enters. Through his persistent efforts and transformative communication methods, he has helped hundreds of business owners build confidence and clarity in their speaking, which has transformed their lives and businesses. Philip is an engineer by degree. He learned in his early corporate years the power of communication and has leveraged that to do more of what he truly enjoys, which is helping people. Phil, welcome to the show. And a couple things. Number one, I can't believe that you were ever shy. And I love that you're a girl dad. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for having me. And it's funny with my in-laws, same thing, is especially my oldest one, she's just super outgoing. And so they say, oh, just like Philip. And it's funny because my mom, she's like, no, he was very quiet. And actually, I had 3 sets of tubes in my ears by the age of 3. And so I actually went to special ed instead of pre-K because I couldn't hear and therefore I couldn't speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated after like 6 months, but just kind of funny story there, if you will, because I couldn't speak or I didn't speak and being shy, like that wasn't me when I was young. So now people see me and they like, no way you were shy or anything like that. And then seeing my oldest daughter and how outgoing she is, it's like, oh yeah, just like Philip. And like, well, that wasn't me when I was her age.
Well, that's interesting. The tubes in the ears and how that affects, our infant development and being able to speak. And that actually does say that does bring a lot in terms of, our personalities and those types of things, especially at that young age.
Yeah.
But did you have brothers and sisters?
I know yeah, I've got an older sister and a younger brother. And one thing I was going to mention there with the development, and my mom's talked about it. Obviously, I didn't know, but I had started kind of talking, and then I actually regressed in my talking because of not being able to hear. And based on what the doctor said, it just sounded like that's what people, when they talk to me, it sounded like I couldn't understand it or couldn't hear it because of all the fluid in my ears. So I mean, I just think about from our perspective, anything that happens with our kids, it's like, oh man, do we get worried? I can't imagine for my parents. And God bless those people that, and I'm sure it's because you love your child, you have the special needs child and you're dealing with that. And I hope I never deal with that, but I know if I have that happen with my children, that I will still love them the same way and everything. But I can imagine as a parent having what you quote unquote normal kid, and all of a sudden they're regressing. And it's like, are they becoming special needs? Like, what's going on here? And you get worried about your child and everything. So I can only imagine how my parents felt during that time as well.
Yeah, I've got a special needs brother. He's my youngest brother. He's special needs. But I mean, that's all I've ever known with him. And I know, I kind of know the story there and some of the things that happened. And, but he's just my brother and that is what it is. But my oldest grandson was kind of, I don't know the full story with you, but it's kind of in your boat. Just had to get tubes in his ears for some of the same reasons, and you can really see his development in terms of communication from the time he got his tubes in his ears, which I believe has been about 6 months now, to now, how much more he is responsive and talking and really interacting really with everybody.
Yeah. And to kind of bring that to adults, I think it's the same thing when we learn how to actually communicate. I know for myself, when I started learning how to communicate better and focused on, what is the other person saying? What do I feel like they're trying to get from this conversation, or just listening to them and how they feel about the situation or what they're saying rather than listening to respond. I started noticing that conversations got a lot better. And so that's kind of the tubes in the ear kind of thing. We tend to
Mhm.
do that. We got the, I guess, cotton in our ears, cotton balls. We don't listen. I'm not listening, and I'm just going to say what I want to say, kind of thing. And those conversations, and they're not really even a conversation because of one sided, always go south. They're
Yes.
such poor interactions with somebody because we're not listening. So we need to listen more in order to communicate better.
Yeah, it's funny. That's it's kind of our political situation right now, right? Nobody wants to listen to anybody else. And what I tell people is, I say, if you just actually be open to listening to what somebody else has to say, you may actually learn something. You may it may jog your brain to think about something from a different perspective. You may actually be able to change somebody else's mind if you're listening to what they're saying, and that goes really across the board in pretty much anything that we do. Um,
Yeah.
as me as an educator, and I try and tell my students these types of things. If you listen to your classmate, if you listen to me, if you listen to other educators, and then you go out into the workforce, and maybe what I say doesn't necessarily fit, and then you're going to actually maybe learn something for the way this person over here is doing it. And or maybe you
Mhm.
could say, I've tried it this way, or what have you. But if we don't actually listen to what other people are saying, this is what we get in society is what we have right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then the other side of it too, and this is an example of somebody that I know. They had, they grew up with some friends in school, and one time because they had just heard at church and everything that, hey, you have to be baptized in order to be saved, and if you're not baptized, you're going to hell. Yeah, and all this stuff. And as a child, they didn't understand how to have that conversation, but because they basically told their friends because they weren't baptized they were going to hell at a younger age, their friends wouldn't talk when religion came up. They couldn't talk to their friends anymore. And it's a sad thing in that, not just with religion. I mean, religion, politics, I think are those big touchy subjects, if you will, that a lot of
Right.
people don't want to talk about and get easily offended by, which a whole different subject on that of why
Hmm.
I think that is. But when you have conversations like that, you never know how detrimental that is to the what could have been a relationship that you have with somebody. So the way we communicate, even if we believe in something, even if it is completely true,
Hmm.
the way we communicate it to somebody, we have to be gentle with that truth, especially something like, if we go back to the religious thing, like, hey, you're going to hell because you don't believe this way or you didn't do this thing. Whoa, like that's a harsh way to say it. Even if it is true, we
Right.
still have to say it in a loving and kind way and then help the person come to understand that. I mean, and of
Exactly.
course there are times where it's like, nope, this is it. This is what you have to do. It's cut and dry. And I go back to my manufacturing days with that and to talk about that. But there's a time and a place for that. But the more we can just learn how to communicate the way the other person wants to communicate, the better it's going to be.
Exactly. And if you have to be baptized to be saved, I would spend my entire life at the altar being baptized. I mean, I
Yeah.
we do stupid stuff all the time, and and it's funny, just that's part of being human, right? and
Yeah.
and accepting it and owning it, and moving on. But it's, I don't know. So let's talk about your speaking journey. So I learned something already, the tubes, but you know how did you really transition from being shy and quiet to where you are today? I mean, talk about the whole gamut, the good, the bad, and when you actually realized that you were really good at this, because um, you know your energy and your presence, you know, is big. I mean, I've seen you. You and I have communicated in the past. I've seen you in other videos, and I've listened to other podcasts that you've done. And when you start talking, you can feel that presence. You can feel that energy. So talk about your entire journey.
So my entire journey. So we go back there, I guess 3 years old or whatever, with the tubes. Fast forward to third grade. Actually, is where I can really think back. I've never actually shared that tube story, so I guess it goes back further than I normally talk about. But
Hmm.
third grade, I missed a day of school. I come back the next day, and because I was so quiet, my teacher, when I said, "Hey, what did I miss?" She looks at me, and I still don't know to this day if she really meant it or not, but she said, you weren't here? Like, that's how quiet I was, that she counted me as being there, being present in the class, even though I missed a day of school. Fast forward to high school, I started kind of opening up to friends only. Like, I'd be more talkative to friends and everything like that. But outside of like my friends group, I really wouldn't talk too much. Going into college, I wanted to make a change there. I wanted to be more outgoing. So I started being more outgoing to people, except for when I wanted to romantically pursue a woman. And then I was still shy and
Hmm.
introverted and wouldn't talk to women in that manner, trying to pursue them to go on dates and stuff like that. And so it was still the shyness. And then really it was two jobs kind of back to back. So I had one in oil and gas in the Houston, Texas area, where I was doing all of the commissioning on these LAC skids, which is lease automatic custody transfer. Basically counts the amount of oil that moves from customer A to customer B. I was going up to North Dakota starting these up, and yet I was getting called the young dumb engineer. I was the one getting blamed for all this stuff, and
Hmm.
I ended up getting laid off from that job, but I just felt so little there. And then I ended up going to another job in Georgia. And at that company, it was another oil and gas company. I would go into these engineering meetings, and I was like one of four engineers. And I had 90% of the talking time in the meetings because of all the projects I was working on. Now, there were a lot like smaller projects versus the other engineers, but still, in the hour meeting, I'd probably speak for 50 minutes of the hour-long meeting
Wow.
every single week. And yet my manager would talk down to me time and time and time again. And that was finally a catalyst for me, because I went, because it was a small company. So I went to the president, which was basically his manager, and talked about it like, hey, what can I do? I just don't know what to do. I feel like I can't speak up anytime I say anything. Like I'm belittled and all these things. And he said, and basically the president was like, well, I'll talk to him, but unfortunately you're just going to deal with people that are assholes. And I'm like,
Well,
wow, okay.
welcome to
Like,
life,
that
right?
doesn't make me feel good. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I mean, I guess that's true, but it was just kind of this enough's enough. And I started
Hmm.
getting into self development and had been to a couple business conferences, but it was like finally enough was enough. And so I decided from that time, that job on, and this was 2017, 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, that I was going to make a change. And at that same time, like doing self development, I thought about doing a podcast. I kind of put it off. And that's where the journey kind of started to change for me, because I moved back to I moved to Greenville, South Carolina, went to Georgia, moved back to Greenville, South Carolina. And I had went to this networking event and asked them, hey, how do you start a podcast? Because I did like everybody else. I had the podcast, I had an idea, I didn't start it. And so I asked them,
Hmm.
and the guy says, well, just start it.
Just do it.
And I'm like,
Right.
yeah. And then, but then of course he gave me some good advice, luckily, but it was more, yeah, just do it, which is really the best advice you can get. And so finally I started just doing it. And so through this, being tired and sick and tired of being put down, going to these business conferences and seeing these speakers and how they could change a whole room. They changed my life and they changed the whole
Hmm.
room. And then starting my own podcast was really the beginning of that journey for me to really get into it. So this was again 2017 timeframe. So it's been almost 8 years since I started doing my first podcast and everything. And so from that point forward, just doing podcasts basically weekly since then. I've had some transitions and stuff, different podcasts and things of
Hmm.
that nature, and getting on conversations like this, networking, just finding ways to put myself in front of people to have a conversation one on one or in front of groups has really helped me transform. And kind of the catalyst for me to really take it to the next level was actually an opportunity I had at BMW Manufacturing doing leadership and transformation. And
Oh,
so
wow.
they actually stuck me in doing presentation skills. And that was what kind of solidified for me, there's something here.
Right.
Other people need this as well. It's not just me. And I had wanted to start to change lives and do more, which is why I wanted to become a speaker so I could speak to the masses. But whenever BMW identified that need for their company, I realized this is something I could do outside of this. And that was kind of the catalyst for me to really start helping other people and not just myself with that speaking. So
That,
that's it. Very try to be condensed, but that is really the journey for me to get into speaking, and now being on awesome podcasts like yours.
I appreciate that. I tell people I'm just a regular guy. I don't say big words. I'm really kind of simple and direct. And as I listen to your story, there's a lot to number one, there's a lot to unpack, but there's also a lot to learn. I mean, from a leadership perspective, your previous managers and even the owner of the company, you know, being a leader isn't just owning something or being in charge of people. Both of them had opportunities to teach and mentor, and for whatever reason, they didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the skills, didn't have the time, what have you, to mentor you, and that didn't happen. And I
Yeah.
think I think that for anybody who's listening, anytime that you're in a position where you need a mentor and it's the people that are supposed to be doing it aren't there, search it out. There's a ton
Yeah.
of people out there that are so willing to help, and they can be community based, they can be professionally based. Uh, people Generally, people are very willing to help, and they want to help, but you have to be willing to ask that question. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and say, "I need help. Can you help me with this?" or what have you. And and I think some of the things that you're doing, especially when you're put in charge of leadership development in BMW, which at the plant that you're at, um, that's a pretty big ask. It's a pretty big task.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are working there that are looking up to you, and obviously, you're doing a good job. Um, what are you still introverted on a regular, in your normal life? Because when we do these things, yes, we're in front of people, and yes, we're talking, but generally, the majority of people are introverts. We're not extroverts.
Mm.
So the majority of people are like us. Outside of doing these types of things and being, the front person, we're just kind of shy, quiet in the background. So are you still like that on a normal, regular basis?
I would say my natural tendency is to go back towards that, but I know with my goals where I'm trying to go that I can't be that way. Typically,
Hmm.
when I get introverted, is whether it's a networking event or it's around a group of people that I don't necessarily know them all. I tend to
Right.
find myself where I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm just gonna kind of stay here. I'm gonna talk to the people that I know, or not really be that outgoing. And it's really strange with like not a networking event, but being at, I can't think, like, maybe it's like a friend's birthday party, but there's like a lot of other people there that like we're
Hmm.
all getting together, or whatever reason we're getting together, but I don't know them all. I tend to find myself where I'm like, yeah, I just don't really want to be a people person right now. But I realize that, and I have to tell myself this all the time, that the person I want to be has to go do those things. Where I want to go, I have to be in front of people. I have to network with people. I have to talk with people. And the only way for people to get to know me is for me to get to know them, for me to start that conversation
Yeah.
with them, because most people don't want to have that initial start. And especially for us guys, the hardest one when you're single is going up and talking to a random girl. But it's
Yeah.
the same thing whether it's a girl and you're trying to pursue them in a romantic way, or if it's a CEO of a company, or for whatever it is you're
Right.
trying to do. That initial start is so difficult. Hey, my name's Philip. But after that, it gets easier. I'm
Right.
not gonna say it's 100% easy, but it's just that going up and just doing that. And so I tell myself a lot of times that these things, okay, I need to at least go talk to 5 people at a networking event, or
Hmm.
okay, I've got to put myself out and do this, or and again, I try and look at my future self. Where am I trying to go? Am I trying to build my business? How can I build that business? Okay, I need to be
Right.
talking to people. People need to be knowing about me. I need to have those conversations. Who does that person know that I don't know, and everything? And especially as we're building up our business, or really trying to build our own credibility, our personal brand, usually the people that don't know us are the ones that are going to promote us more. I mean, going back to what you talked about,
Right.
you obviously, we haven't known each other for that long, so you had no clue I was a shy person. So you identify me as being this confident and bold person.
Right.
But my family, people that I know from grade school, from high school even, they identify me as that shy person. And so for us to be able to change our identity, unfortunately, a lot of times we have to be around other people, people
Yes.
that don't know our past selves. And so that's kind of a hack there for you to be able to do that. But you have to start getting to know other people, because they're going to be the ones
Hmm.
that are going to start to promote you. They're going to see you in that light that you're trying to personify yourself as. And I'm not saying be fake, but you're trying to be a new person. If I want to be a good husband, I have to act like a good husband's going to act. I can't just, oh, I'm a husband, I'm married, cool, so I'm a good husband now. But then I sit around and I do nothing, and I'm sloppy, and then I just have my wife at my beck and call. No, that's not a good husband. A good
Right.
husband is going to take care of the yard, is going to try and help with the dishes, is going to give a lending hand when the kids need help and everything, trying to be proactive. That's a good husband. Of course, there's
Right.
other things. I'm not saying just those things, but I am actively trying to pursue being a good husband. So whatever you're trying to do, you have to actively be pursuing it. And it's not just fake it till you make it, it's be
Right.
it until you become it mentality. And,
I
so
think,
that's what I try and do. And that's so, yeah, I still have those shy, introverted tendencies, but I realize if I want to go where I'm trying to go, who's the person I have to be that? And that's not that
yeah,
shy person. I have to be the outgoing person.
yeah. I like the be it till you become it a lot better than the fake it till you make it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the fake it till you make it doesn't sound real, doesn't sound authentic, but the be it till you become it, I mean, that does sound more real. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Which really goes into what you mentioned about, like, I have the energy when I'm on podcasts and on videos and stuff like that, and I appreciate that compliment. That's it's I love hearing that it means I'm doing the right thing and everything, and I've been working on that and trying to be more energetic on these things. But it really comes back to the intentionality,
mhm,
because I truly believe that I am trying, and I want to put this through how I'm saying it. I'm trying to help people. Yes, of course, I want to be able to build my business and be able to make money and stuff like that. We all have to do that to be able to put food on the table. But I'm more concerned about helping people than making a dollar today. I know
right.
eventually I'm going to make it. And of course, I need to make some kind of money, but I'm more concerned with the person. And because of that, and I equate it to commission breath. People can sense when you're speaking, when you're trying to be genuine and authentic and nice and all
Mm,
these things, they can smell it 1,000 miles away.
absolutely.
And it's commission breath, but it's speaker's breath, I'll call it, if you will. People can tell that you're not
They can.
actually being true about that.
Mhm.
And so it's about actually having the care behind it. That's how that energy comes out when I'm speaking and when other speakers are speaking, because they truly care or they truly believe in their message. Again, going to salespeople, if I don't believe that this product is that great, and I talk about it and it's, oh, here's the features and here's why it's so great, da 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 da, da, you're gonna tell I'm just saying it because that's just the facts about it. But when I
Exactly.
truly believe in it and talk about it from a place of true belief, you're going to believe in that product because you believe me.
Right.
And so that's what you need to have. You need to have that belief behind it, the feelings behind what you're saying, for people to really feel that and get that energy from you.
Exactly. And if at least I believe this, if that's it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. I mean, it's you're not selling now. You're helping people, and in the
Yeah.
end, you're going to get so much more in return. And not that we do it, not that we help people for that return, but that's what ends up happening because you're building a relationship. Everything is relationship based. It's all people based.
Yes.
It's all in people talk about AI this and AI that, and everything's going to be AI. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be about individual and personal relationships. And the better that you are building personal relationships, the better off you're going to be. The
Yeah.
better off everybody's going to be.
Agreed. Agreed. And you talking about AI. I mean, I think about ads on Facebook or all social medias, this, that, and the other, for constantly cold DMs, all this stuff. I get more business by having genuine conversations with
Mhm.
people, or knowing somebody who introduces me to somebody else. So I've had a relationship with the first person, they introduced me to their a friend of theirs, and now we have that mutual connection. I get more business from that than trying to spam the DMs, from
Yes.
trying to run ads and stuff like that. While those are things that need to be done and they are effective, I get more business from genuine connections versus doing cold connections or just
Right.
going straight in for that pitch, that sell and everything.
Exactly. I don't know if you saw this article, that came out probably 2 weeks ago. The number of AI podcast hosts and podcast guests. When I read that there's like thousands of them, that really kind of blew me away. That
Wow.
that there are AI podcast hosts and AI podcast guests, and I would think that you know people would be able to ferret that out, right? But maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
well,
That's
I mean, and then the other side of me too, like, I mean, if it's a good message, maybe that works. Maybe it's a good thing. I mean, I don't know, but I think it really should be genuine people.
mhm.
It's kind of scary what AI can do. I mean, kind of another side to that. Like, there's like AI girlfriends now. I mean,
Oh my
and there's
god.
people online making money, and they just have some kind of AI account, and these usually sleazy accounts, if you will, or
Yes.
you triple X kind of accounts, but they're making tons of money, and it's not even actually them because
Right.
they're getting AI is getting that good, unfortunately. But I still believe at the end of the day, and we kind of talked a little bit offline about the political spectrum and everything, and how things seem to be shifting. There's gonna become a shift with that too. Like right now, AI seems to be the easy button. People are willing to go to that. It's a thing. Oh, it's a cool thing. It's the buzz thing. And I think there will still be a place for AI,
Mhm.
but we're going to start seeing more genuine connections be that thing. And we saw that with 2020 with COVID. We saw where people went from like, oh, we didn't really want to connect to now we want to connect more. And actually, I think I've got a post coming up that'll talk about this. But my wife and I were out to eat and we're like, oh my gosh, that server was awesome.
Mhm.
But then we got to think about it afterwards. Like she was polite, she smiled, she came by to ask what we were doing, but that was about it. Like she didn't really go above and beyond. She did some very basic stuff, but the level of service now has gone down so much that anybody that does what used to be the basics is above and beyond almost,
Right.
which is really pathetic. So I say that to say to anybody that's trying to have genuine connections, they're trying to be genuine in their speech, by you just doing the basics, you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of anybody using AI or people not even trying, or
Exactly.
they just have that speaker breath on them and everything. So just be genuine. And I know it's a buzzword, but be yourself, and you're going to attract people. And it's going to take longer for sure, but it'll be more sustainable in the long run.
Yeah. And the payoff at the end, it's going to be much bigger than you could ever really imagine.
Yeah, yeah, and the shift is coming back to people want more genuine connections.
They
People
do.
want to meet in person more. That shift is coming back. It's just going to take some time.
Mhm. So where'd you learn how to tell stories? I mean, because storytelling it's hard. It's not easy. Especially when I talk about my students and my clients. We'll talk about confidence here in a little bit, but they don't. Number one, they don't know who they are, and they don't even know how to express, their story. Everybody has a story, and it's
Mhm.
not wrong. Your story isn't wrong because it's yours, but you just have to figure out how to tell it to compel people, and and I guess at the end of the day, have that. So what? Why is that story important, and what is it that you want them to do with that story, or to change your life, or what have you? So where'd you learn how to tell stories?
Really just getting reps in through
Hmm.
podcasts and stuff like this is really how I kind of came about it, and really just assessing what was I saying, what made sense. And then what I do now, any analogy that I try and share, I go based on the audience. What is the audience trying to get out of the message that I'm sharing, and who is the audience? And just to give an example, and so I like to use a lot of examples and analogies. So uh, politics is always just an easy one to talk about.
Hmm.
So if I'm in a room full of conservatives, I can talk about conservative things or conservative politics, whatever, and it's going to relate with them. But if I start talking about some woke ideology, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Get him off the stage. Like they're not gonna want to listen to me. And so that story is either relatable because it's a more conservative type story, or it's unrelatable and really offensive because it's a woke type story. Not that either one is necessarily right or wrong, but it's the audience and how they're going to perceive that
Right.
message. And so for me, really how I learned was through podcast and continuing to tell my story and refine it and figure out how to say it better and more precise and um which I think without more compact and everything,
Yeah.
more concise and everything. But then learning to also think about my audience rather than just, oh, here's my story, let me blabble on for 10 or 15 minutes. No, what would be most beneficial for my audience? And there's little things I'll pick up and take out depending on who the audience is and everything, and in the
Right.
direction we're trying to go with the podcast in this case, or what I want to go and have as a takeaway for the audience that I'm speaking with. And so that's really how I continue to refine and develop and change it based on that audience, because it's not only just about learning how to start telling stories and really how stories are, do well, is because it's relatable to that audience. So, really just getting the reps in first of all, but then start thinking more about your audience first. And then, okay, now how would this part of my story relate with that audience? Or what can I do to have analogies if it's not part of my story to relate with the audience and my message at the same time?
That's so
So that's
important.
how I would do it and how I went about doing
Yeah.
it.
I mean, 2 points that are so important. The audience and repetition. I mean, to me, it's always about the audience. And,
Mhm.
go back to what you said about the podcast. You just have to do it. You have to
Yeah.
to start doing things, and the more you do them, the more you're going to learn, the better that you're going to get. The more that you can refine that message. Um, and it's so important. There are certain things that we do, and just from an educational perspective, you know, we just have to do right. You just have to go
Mhm.
do it and try it and get better at it. And then there are other parts of it where, okay, we need to teach you how to do it and why we're doing it this way, right? But there's so many people. You talk to pretty much anybody who's done a podcast, they've heard, oh, I wanted to do it here and I didn't do it, and I didn't do it, and I kept putting it off. And somebody said, just do it. And there are certain things you just have to just do and
Yeah.
figure it out as you go along and get better at it as you go along. And so, I've got another podcast with this one that I've been doing for a couple of years. This one just started in February, so almost a year old.
Hmm.
And in doing this, talking about professional development and talking about becoming better communicators, what I've found is that there are so many people in the coaching space that come from engineering backgrounds.
Hmm.
I mean, it's incredible. I would say probably 1 in 5 people, maybe even more than that come from
Interesting.
from engineering. And I tell people all the time that I'm a marketer, public relations guy. What we do is not rocket science. If it's about talking to people, it's about building relationships, right? And I
Mhm.
say it's not rocket science. And then you know I met a new friend who's an actual rocket scientist who's now helping people, become better public speakers, and had a good laugh. I said, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this, but excuse me. And I think what it is because of the content and the way that engineers and STEM professionals think about things. It's that type of information is really difficult to share for the layperson, and so you have to find ways to do that. Why do you think that is?
I actually didn't know that a lot of engineers end up becoming coaches, but I know for me, that's what helped me excel in my career because I have a background in controls engineering, which is and my wife, when I say or when I talked about doing this, she'd be like, I don't know what he does there, but basically I automate the process of how cars are built. So I go in and create a program that tells devices when they can and cannot move, and it's monitoring them at all times and stuff like that. And so I had to find ways to be able to quote unquote dumb down
Mhm.
what was going on, especially to management. And I found as I was able to start communicating that better, that people would come to me more to ask those questions. So they knew I knew what I was talking about from the technical side, but they could come to me and understand what the actual issue was, because especially in these big corporations, you're always answering to somebody. So you need to be able to have the
Mhm.
information, because unfortunately, as you go higher up, you know less and less technical stuff, or you understand less and less of that technical nitty gritty stuff. And so they have to be able to explain it in a way. So I guess kind of naturally, just through learning to communicate better, I found out how to actually think about how is my audience going to perceive this? What is their background knowledge on this? And so if I say control systems or PLCs, most audience probably like, what in the world is that? A PLC is a programmable logic controller, or an industrial computer, in other words. And so, like, talking through this and learning how to speak with people like that are non-technical people, I guess, was really just how it kind of helped me with my engineering side of things, and then helped me really grow and develop my career, which again goes back to how speaking helped me out. And I think that's why, because you have the technical aptitude and you can think logically as an engineer, but
Mhm.
then you if you've gotten to that point where you've grown beyond just the engineering, you've learned to kind of communicate, you can then become a better coach, because now, yes, you know the technical stuff, and really with engineering, it's all about learning and applying, and then literally reverse engineering things. And I think that's why they become, and I didn't realize, like I said, I didn't realize it was 1 in 5 that were engineers, but it makes a lot of sense, because we're able to take data, we're able to take information and parse it out, reverse engineer it, and say, here's what you should do, here's your steps. Because that's a lot of what we do on a repetitive basis. We try and figure out a way to create a process out of things, rather than this, we'll figure it out, we'll just kind of do it. No, we're always trying to streamline things, and that's just how our mind thinks. So
Mhm.
going into the coaching space, whether it's speaking, business, whatever it is, we can take that information and understand it in some way, shape, or form. And I've talked to my wife about this, because I'm like, yeah, I work on stuff all the time. I have no clue what I'm doing, but I have to figure it out.
Right.
And so as a coach, you're coming in not knowing a lot of the background information on the business, not knowing a lot of background information on the person. But as an engineer, you're used to that already. So you're able to take very little information and be able to figure out some kind of process, some kind of plan, and you're able to problem solve through that. And so I can see why so many engineers become coaches, because of that, because they have the aptitude for it, because they're used to not having a lot of information and making something happen. I mean, I've had
Right.
plenty of jobs as well where you go in and you're like, "Hey, can you fix this? I've never seen this system before. I've never been in the program, but yeah, I'll figure it out." And you just go in and you start looking around, and of course, the management's sitting there, "Why aren't you done?" Dude, I've never even seen this thing before. I don't
Right.
even know what this is, but I'm figuring it out for you. And then you figure it out and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is great." And it's like, yeah, okay. And then you move on. And you might not even do that ever again, but you had to figure it out kind of on the fly. And so I think that's why, to me, just thinking about it here in the moment, that's probably why a lot of
Mhm.
coaches are engineers, because they can problem solve and they can take small amount of information and actually make something out of it.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought too. Is you, you know you ask questions, right, and then
Hmm.
you can process that information and then ask other questions. It's uh, the critical thinking ability, to to build on things and to get to the point. Um, and if you think about it, you got kids, and
Hmm.
you've got to you're teaching these kids from teach them how to eat, teach them how to use a
Yeah.
fork, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you find ways to do that. Sometimes it's trial and error. You teach them how to read. You teach them how to get dressed. Teach them how to tie their
Yeah.
shoes. These are all processes and require communication from you as a parent to a a child, an infant, a toddler, what have you. That you're teaching them brand new things, and you're finding ways to make that connection for them. Really, this is
Yeah.
no different. It's just on a bigger scale with more money,
Yeah.
with more technical um, issues and problems.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and just finding ways to be able to talk through that, and help somebody with that next step, because everything has some kind of process. It's and it seems like a lot of people want to kind of start in the middle. Like, no, let's either start at the end and reverse our way back, or let's start at the beginning and
Hmm.
go to the end. It's not about starting in the middle and we'll kind of go each way and figure it out. Like, but unfortunately, too many people want to do that.
Right.
But you need to figure out from the beginning what's going on. And like you said, asking those questions. I mean, as a coach, that's such an important thing to ask questions for clarity. Those clarifying questions, get more clarity on it. What's happening? What happened before all this happened? Because that will let me know what direction I need to go.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it's all about.
That's kind of how my brain works. How did we get here?
Yeah,
What happened before this to get us to this point? And where was the disconnect, or where was the light bulb moment to say that, wow, this is the right thing that we should be doing. Um, that's more how I look at it. Let's go back and figure out where did it start. What were the steps? How do we get here? Now,
yeah,
I can go backwards, but I would much rather start at the beginning and then figure it out that way too. It's we all process things and think about things differently, but I've never been a person to start in the middle and go. To me,
yeah.
that just doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah, well, I
whatever,
mean, even with
you know.
speaking, I'm sure you've had this
Mhm,
question, what can I do to get better at speaking? This, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, well, you can answer the question. Okay, hey, get your phone out, start doing videos, or
mhm.
have vocal variety, this, that, and the other. Blah, blah, blah. Like you can list off so many things, but that person might not actually need to worry about vocal variety, or they may
You're
not
right.
have a lot of ums and ahs, or they may actually look at the camera when they're talking instead of looking at the screen, like
Mhm.
to simulate eye contact if it's on video or whatever. They might not have those things. So you need to just start. So those that are trying to get into speaking, trying to get better at speaking, start speaking, start doing these videos, whether you just record it and leave it on your phone, or you actually post to social media, or you start doing a podcast. You have to get started so you can know what you need to actually work on. Because if I do a
Exactly.
video and I'm flawless, I never say an and ah, well, why do I need to go search a video of how to remove filler words? I don't. So you
Exactly.
got to start somewhere and know your baseline, and then you can start working on those things. So even if before going to a coach, figure out what those things are, and your coach should start with that. Hey, let's get some videos together.
Let's see where you're at.
Show me how you speaking, and then we can start talking through that. But unfortunately, and I think there's a lot of coaches that just want to, here, if we're going to start this, or you talk about your marketing background. Okay, rather than saying, hey, so what are you doing for marketing right now? Okay, you need to start running ads, and we need to get your SEO together, and we need to get that website revamped, blah blah blah, like all these things. Like, but actually, I don't even have a website, so that we need to build it. I can't revamp it, or I don't have SEO because I don't have a website. Like, there's all these things. Like, okay, so where are you
Right.
at? We need to figure out where you're at first, so we can know those next steps. And unfortunately, especially with speaking, people want to know how to get better at speaking. But they hadn't even started.
Haven't even
So
started yet. Right. So
you got to
you
get
don't even know what the
started.
problems is. Yeah. And
Yeah.
when I first started, when I was teaching, um, I kept telling the students, you got to stop the uhs and the ums. And I just kept telling them that. And then finally somebody
Yeah.
said, you keep telling us that, but you don't tell us how. And that was a light bulb moment for me.
Mm. Mm.
Because for me, it's just you just do it, right? You just
Yeah.
and that's I had to show them the process of, you know, uh, the uhs and the ums are a function of preparation and confidence.
Yes.
And so
Exactly.
how do we prepare and how do we become more confident? Now we have something we can actually talk about and work on to get better at. It's not just stop doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I was gonna say that, like, that's the thing. When you know what you're talking about, you're gonna have. I mean, we're all naturally gonna have the ums and ahs. I'm sure you and
Right.
I both have said several of those in this podcast. Now it's a little bit, ad hoc. We're not, scripted here, so it's not as much. I mean, so you're gonna have those, but when you know what you're talking about, especially when you're going on a stage to give a keynote, you should know what you're going to talk about. So a lot of those ums and ahs should not be there because one, you know what you're talking about, but two, that preparation, like you said, if you're prepared and you know what you're going to talk about, I would say 99% of them should be gone. That's usually, we don't like silence. So you got to get comfortable with silence too.
Silence. Yeah.
But it's usually because we don't know what we're going to say next. And then because of not being comfortable with silence, and then you start talking again because you just want to have something there
Exactly.
to fill in the void of silence.
Right. And that's it. And I like what you said, be comfortable with silence.
Yeah.
So the idea of silence and pause is teaching them how powerful they can be used, how powerful they are if they're used in the right spots. Um, but that's a different discussion for a different day.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, so how do you help people build confidence? Because I mentioned it. Most young professionals don't spend any time really, and maybe I was the same way, thinking about who they are as an individual, who they are as a person. What are their values? Those types of things, and their confidence level in themselves is so low. How do you help them? Actually build confidence.
Twofold here. So one, really start getting them to get reps in when it comes to, especially on the speaking side, get reps in with speaking, doing videos. But then the other side of this is a mindset shift. You feel like you don't know a lot about something because you know how much you don't know. And I'll give a good little
Hmm.
engineering example here.
Hmm.
A lot of people, I've been doing some interviews here lately and asking, like, hey, where do you rate yourself as far as like Microsoft Suite or Google Suite when it comes off all the tools there? And they're like, oh, 9 out of 10, but I know there's some more I can learn. And I started thinking about for myself, like, where would I actually rate myself at? And honestly, I'd probably rate myself like a 6 or so because I know how much I don't know, especially when it comes to Excel.
Yeah.
There is so much in Excel, and I'm always having to go Google, okay, how to do this in Excel. So I realized that while I can be proficient on a basic level, I know there's so much more that I don't know. And that's that. And I say that to say a lot of times this lack of confidence comes in because when you're an expert in a certain area, you realize just how much you don't know and you feel like, well, I can't teach that because I haven't mastered it completely. But teaching something to other people, most people, the general population, the things that are basic to you are really not even basic. That's probably like a 201 or a 301 class for them. Like they need something even more basic than that.
Right.
And so I really try and instill the confidence, but let them understand and know what's basic for you is actually what people need from you. They don't need that next level, which is what you're trying to learn, unless it's all people that are on your same level, then yes, they're going to need that next level, but you're probably not going to be teaching them. But if you're teaching somebody, it's typically the things that are more basic to you now. And I like to think about that framework of something that your 2 or 3 year younger self you wish you would have known then. Those are the
Absolutely.
types of things that you're teaching and not necessarily what you don't actually know right now. And so it's the twofold. One, getting reps in, but two, shifting that mindset to understand that it's really the basics that you're teaching on, not necessarily the advanced stuff that you have finally just started learning that most people want to and need to learn from you on whatever
Yeah.
subject it is that you're teaching on.
Yeah, that's so critical to understand. And I also think it's important for those people that you're teaching this subject matter to see you as the professional or the master, the teacher, whatever you want to call it, the expert, that they see you getting better in certain areas as well. They see you go through the struggle. They see you go through the process of trying to get better. And as a for example, for me, 6, 7 months ago, I couldn't take a selfie because I don't know where to look. You know, and my excuse was, well, men don't do that. That's not what men do. Men don't. We're not men don't do pouty lips. So you know,
Just duck lips.
but you know, since starting this podcast, I'm doing these videos. I'm on camera a lot, and I'm practicing and getting better. And they see this progression, and they see that it's work. They see the reps, and it doesn't just happen overnight. Anything that you want to be good at takes time and effort. I mean,
Mhm.
it's the whole idea of 10,000 hours. Go back to
Yeah.
again, I come from the sport industry, so I go back to, the all-time greats, Kobe Bryant's, Michael Jordan's, Tiger Woods, Tom Brady's. How much time did they practice the fundamentals and go over and over and over and over? And even when they were playing, before, up until they retired, they still practice fundamentals over and over again, getting those reps in. Speaking is no different. You have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Completely agree there. Yeah, and getting those reps in, like, and I saw some videos the other day. I was going through like YouTube trying to put more videos that are on that I was a guest appearance on for podcasts and everything into a little folder on my YouTube channel. And I was seeing one from like 3 years ago. I'm like, oh man, I forgot about that one. And then I started watching a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I sounded terrible. And it's just, constantly we're getting better and we're learning more and we're finding new ways to be better at that. So if you're trying to get into speaking, you just got to get started. And I found the easiest way for me is one podcast, like guesting on podcasts, but more importantly, than that doing your own solo episodes. When I start doing my own solo episodes, it helped me be able to start to articulate a message and have
mm,
bullet points that support that overall message, and learning how to go from speaking and, oh man, it felt like this was forever and I spoke for 3 minutes on a topic, to being able to start speaking for 10 or 15 minutes. And really beyond that, like, I can kind of, okay, here's an idea, and I can start speaking on it for about 10 maybe to 15 minutes depending on the subject without preparation. But if I start preparing, I can get 15-20 minutes easy. And
mhm.
doing a podcast episode is a lot different than going to speak on stage, because it's something you typically have down more, but I can speak for a lot longer. But before that was really doing videos. So my two suggestions, if you're trying to get better at speaking, start making video content for social media, because people still, even though we see a lot of videos out there, a majority of people still are not posting videos. And second thing is,
Mhm.
start doing solo podcast episodes. And then if you want to get into the guesting realm, go and do that, whether you have a guest on your podcast or you go be a guest on other people's podcasts. Start finding ways to be able to start speaking on subjects that you enjoy and talking with people and having those conversations. That's going to help you so much more than studying and listening to podcasts like this to get better at speaking.
Exactly. I mean, it's so important, and I like the whole idea that you mentioned about, doing solo episodes, because, on top of being able to speak that long on a given topic, you can then put things in a logical order, so it
Yeah.
makes more sense. You're not bouncing all over the place, going from point A to point D, back to point B to C to F to whatever. You can structure it so that it becomes logical, so it becomes that story, so that it becomes um, something that people want to listen to, as
Yeah.
opposed to just extemporaneously talk about things. Oh, and I forgot about this, and I forgot about that. And the other piece, let's talk about confidence from the standpoint of um, volume, tone, enunciation. I had a conversation with a student a couple weeks ago, and I was trying to get him to explain something that he said he had knowledge in, and he really did have some good knowledge in it. But I had to keep asking him to speak up. I can't hear you.
Mm.
Can you repeat yourself? I didn't understand what you said. Um, how important is it to speak with authority? Speak so people can hear you. Enunciation, changes in volume, changes in tone, to really bring that message home.
It is so important. And actually, this goes back to one of the best pieces of advice I got early in my career from a manager who really wasn't a great manager, but I was going into these companies, being a programmer, trying to figure out the problem. Never been at the plant, never seen the program before, and he told me, no matter what, go in there with confidence and don't let them know, even if you don't know in the moment, because you're not going to know in the moment about the problem and how to fix it. Don't let them know that you don't know.
Hmm.
And that stuck with me. And so I always just went in that, like, hey, I can fix this. Like, give me some time, I'm going to look at this, and really kind of giving that plan. And so, where was I going with that? So I would say that having that confidence, because what he said with that, if you show that you don't know what you're doing, they're always going to wonder, does Philip actually know what he's doing? You could fix a million problems at their plant, but they will still question you every single time because you lack that
Mhm.
confidence in yourself. And so when we're going and speaking in front of people, you have to have that confidence. If I told you, you know, the sky's blue, if I said it like that, and you're like, wait, you don't know if the sky's blue or not? If I
Right.
said, hey, the sky's blue, you're like, oh yeah, the sky's blue. Yeah, I believe that. Or if I was like, hey, the sky's green, like, okay, okay, and I thought it was blue. I mean,
Mm.
obviously, it needs to be something more,
Right.
not like that. But if I come in with that confidence in my voice and I say it more as a statement, people are gonna believe me more. And another example for you, when you're going in, and I'm sure we've all done this, when you're going into some building, department store, whatever it is, and you go in looking like you know where you're going, people don't stop you. But
Right.
when you go in there and you're kind of like looking around, like, oh, I'm not sure where to go, people stop you. Hey, can I help you? Can I help you find where you're trying to go? So it's just literally that shift in, hey, you act or you sound like you know where you're going. So that confidence is imperative for people to listen to you. And so when you're trying to present on whatever it is, you have to have that confidence in your voice and in your body language, that you know what you're talking about, that you're here to deliver something for people. You believe in your message. So it's imperative. So hopefully those
Yeah.
those analogies kind of helped explain that.
Yeah. And when you said it, the first thing I started thinking about is, as a tourist, if you're in a city and you're looking around, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. So if you go
Yep.
if you go to New York City, if you go to any major city, don't be looking around. Just walk like you got a purpose. Go to point A to point B, and you're not going to be targeted by all those other nefarious things. I don't know if anybody's
Yeah.
ever been to Vegas. You ever been to Vegas?
Yeah, I've been to Vegas.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the stuff that goes on there. No, I don't want that car. Just keep on walking. just
Yeah, yeah.
just keep on
Well,
walking.
it's funny you say that. So I was in Scotland. I was on a work trip over there one time, but I went to Edinburgh for just go for like a weekend thing, like not work stuff. And I was heading towards the castle, and it was so funny because like it's really funny, but I'm going there and I had my GPS out. I'm like, okay, but I guess I look confident. I had a group of Americans stop me, like, hey, do you know how to get to the castle? And it was funny because, like, here I am. I'm from America. This is my first time ever and only time ever being in the country. And they come to me asking me, and I'm like, well, I'm American as well. They're like, oh, we got a fun laugh. But then I'm like, it's right there. They turn around and you can see the mountain now, or not the mountain, the castle. Like how you got there exactly wasn't directly to it, but I'm like, it's right there on
Right
top of
there.
the hill. It's that big building over there. But it was just really funny because I had that confidence that it looked like I knew where I was going. These other Americans asked the American how to get somewhere.
That's crazy. That's
Like,
crazy.
yeah.
Well,
So confidence is extremely important.
yeah, that's us being Americans. Way to go.
Yeah.
We did it. We did
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
So, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think our audience should know about?
No, I think that especially for confidence type stuff, I think we
Mhm.
really covered everything. I just want to emphasize again, just get started. It's the most annoying piece of advice, but it's really the best piece of advice. Or as Nike says, just do it. If it's something that's on your mind, go ahead and do it, because you're going to start thinking about it and you're going to overthink it. And then you're going to procrastinate, and it'll be 6 years later, and somebody else will say the same piece of advice. So just get started, because for you to get to where you want to go, you have to do things that you're not doing now. You have to start doing things that your future self will be doing. Again, be it until you become it. Start acting in a manner of the person that you want to be, and eventually you're just going to be that person.
Exactly. So you also have a lot of good things going on. Tell us about that. I mean, you've got the podcast, you've got your trainings, you've got your courses. Tell us about what you have going on.
Yeah, a lot of things. So, trying to get on more stages, more podcasts like this. I also help with public speaking coaching, but then another endeavor that I have because of getting myself on podcasts and leveraging virtual assistants, I actually started a virtual assistant agency, which is something it's a lot of fun for me because it's really a win-win-win because I help pair busy people, salespeople, business owners with virtual assistants, primarily from the Philippines, be able to get more things done, really buying back their time so they can focus on the things that they really enjoy doing, such as being on a podcast, rather
Hmm.
than trying to reach out to everybody themselves personally, trying to book the call, this, that, and the other. They can have a virtual assistant do that who's happy to do that on their behalf and everything. And so that's really the other thing I have outside of the podcast. Speaking sessions is the name of that podcast, and doing the public speaking coaching and a digital course, Present with Influence, is that virtual assistant agency.
The, the,
And then
the
of
whole
course the family. I guess I forgot, you brought up business stuff, but the family as well. So a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. I've got my hands full there as well.
yeah, yeah, yes, you do. It's enjoy that time with them because it
Oh
goes
yeah.
by so incredibly fast. And I know people are going to think I'm nuts for even saying this and thinking this, but I've got 3 grandchildren now. The oldest is almost 5, and
Hmm.
it hit me, and I don't know why. It's just the way my brain thinks. I said to my daughter last week, I said, she's halfway to being 18.
Hmm.
And she's almost 5. I'm thinking
Yeah.
this time flies by so
Yeah.
incredibly fast. And they, especially at that age, they grow up so fast. And honestly, I was talking to my other daughter on the way in to the office today. Her son is he was born July 7th, so he's almost 6 months old. And I said, a week is like a dog year.
Yeah.
I mean, they change so
They
quickly.
do. They
and
do.
and I was I was guilting her. I said, I haven't seen pictures. I haven't seen a picture of him in a week. What are you doing? That's your job as a mother to make sure that I'm getting pictures on a daily basis. And we had another conversation about technology that I had no idea about. So she taught me about whatever. It's not really that important, but I had no idea that she'd been uploading pictures to a shared account that I had no idea about. Anyway,
Oh
but
man.
but they take up so much time, but it's joyous time. It's time that you want to be
Yes.
able to spending with them. So please, please, please enjoy it. But where can people? If I know you don't want people working with your kids, but you know, where can people come and meet you and work with you to help get better at public speaking?
The place I like the most is Facebook. So the Real Philip Sessions, and that's Philip with 1 L.
Awesome.
But you can find me all over.
I'll put that in the show notes. And again, I really like that you call your business speaking sessions. I mean,
Yeah.
it's catchy. I mean, I guess you can do that with your last name, but
Yep.
it's awesome. Well, Philip, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. I really, really do appreciate it. I think it was an awesome conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, but take care. We'll talk to you soon. Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to join our growing community and register for the Forming for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode of Speaking with Confidence. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formingforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Forming for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. We'll see you next time. Take care.